say something?
Most of you may have already explored the field of AI. Like you have done more practical. Like many of them have at least tried some basics of building models. At least that we all know.
Okay. I guess many of you must have covered the CPNM course in your first year, right? And you have done some numerical methods, right? And there was something called linear regression. I guess it was not exactly called linear regression, but it's very similar to that. You are given a number of data points and you want to fit a line that will have the least square error from each of those data points. I guess that has been taught in numerical methods. Could anybody confirm?
Yes, that has been taught.
Yes. So that is the very basics of what should I say, artificial intelligence, and
That was under
yeah.
that was under name card fitting.
Yes, fitting, yes. So we often think that AI is something big, AI is something that people don't understand, or maybe there are a lot of technologies involved. But frankly speaking, AI is actually very simple in that sense that we are, just for example, this fitting problem that you had to do in your NM class, nobody realized that it is just the basic building block of understanding AI. Obviously, when you will be like 2-3 months from now, if you are continuing with this session, then you will know that there are a lot more than just fitting a curve to some data points. But you need to realize this, that it's not actually very difficult, but a very simple mathematical ideas. So yes, let us begin the session. I guess we are already it's already 5:10. Yeah. So today it will be a basic introduction session, but I guess there is a lot of information that you will get to know, or you will learn from today. So without any further ado, we start. Yes. So first, I would like to talk about
another
data
thing.
science. Yeah.
Excuse me. Another thing, like I would like to initially point out that it will be a more of a practical session than of a more theoretical approach. So we would expect some kind of engagement and involvement from your side too, since we'll be going on practically. So we'll not be able to move forward unless we get some feedback, like if it's going the right way or not. So please try to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, continue.
If anybody has any message to say, just like Arnav Shur has asked me something, just ask it to Shanawas so that he can reply while I'll be, or possibly ask it in the public so that anybody can reply. Yes, you will get the recordings, don't worry. But we expect you to attend the sessions because it will be beneficial for you, that you can ask us questions live. Okay, continuing. So first I'd like to talk about data science. So data science is that field where we utilize the power of data. Okay, I'm not giving a definition, but I'm telling you the truth. We need to just realize what is the power of data. Let's say, for example, when you registered with us, you had to fill out a form, right? and there you gave your departments, your addresses, your maybe date of birth. I don't remember. Yeah, but the thing is, from all of this data, we can calculate a number of things, and that will help us to recognize what kind of audience that we are facing. For example, maybe most of you must be from UG1. That is one inference that we can make. Many of you are from the CSC department and possibly IT and ETC departments. So that is another inference. And there's a lot more. So data is very crucial in understanding the business of things, right? And as you can see, I've written circa 1962 to infinity. 1962 was the year in which professor of mathematics John Wilder Tukey, Tukey, John Wilder Tukey, he talked about how data will be important in the coming ages, and that is why I written 1962. And infinity, because the power of data is immense, and it is being tapped into, and it will be like there forever. So we take another example of McDonald's, just to tell you the scale of data that can be there. McDonald's is a food service retailer with 31,000 restaurants in 119 countries, with 50 million customers each day. And you can just understand the scale of its operations. Let's say it wants to start a new McDonald's restaurant in some other locations, say for example, in some area around another university. So what will it have to go through? First of all, let's say it will have data of all the stores in India, and for every store it will have some ID, location, some area that it covers, what is the opening date, yearly revenue, number of employees, number of customers daily, and the list goes on. I didn't add my tables, all the columns, but you can understand that all of these have some impact. Say for example, yearly revenue. By location, you can obviously have a different yearly revenue, because maybe some location has much more potential than some other location. And for each of these stores, again, you will have, let's say, what are the food that it serves, what are the ingredients, the cost, profits, and all the data. And why will it require the data? Say the location is somewhere around Jadavpur University. So there will be a lot of students who are potential customers, and students mean low budget. So they have to insensitize the students using food by providing food that are low cost, and they will have to work on that. And then all of these will come into play while doing all of that. Then there will be yearly revenues, the business models. Also, there will be location data. Say, for example, if the location is not good, then it will not have accessibility, and that will be a problem. Okay, I understand that I'm going to business, but you need to understand these things, because for data science to work, it has to understand what it is serving, what business is serving. So I hope you got the idea about the scale of data and how data is required, how every of these columns is important. Another field, finance. Say for example, someone is applying for bank loans, and the bank has the list of all the previous loans that it has given, and whether that customer was a defaulter or not, given the credit scores, assets, his employment status, the amount that was charged. So that's the total amount, and so on and so forth. And we are predicting, that is, we are doing a risk analysis of whether that a particular customer who has applied for a loan should be given bank loan or not. So that is another possibility. And there are infinite number of these. I have just spoken about 2 or 3 of these. And for data science to work, as I have already said, you need to understand the business or the domain knowledge. You also need to understand maths and statistics, because what will you do with all these tables of data if you can't statistically model them, if you can't find, say for example, the mean, median, mode, the distribution of the data, what will be the standard normal distribution, what will be the z-score, and so on and so forth. And obviously computer science plays a huge part, because it not only reduces these calculations, the effort behind these calculations, but it also allows us to analyze in a much better way. You'll understand how. Other forms of data, we talked about tabular data. It can be images, videos, audio, text, and numerous kinds of data. And what is a data science life cycle? Like, what happens throughout from the first to the end? So first we understand the problem. As I said, we need to understand the business and the domain knowledge. Then we gather relevant data. This is very much important, that you gather data and it should be relevant to the task that you are going to do. For example, say you are having, say for example, in the bank loan case, right? So it was about customers and if they have asked for loans, and then if they were defaulted or not. So we don't require the data for a customer who hasn't asked for a loan anytime in the bank, right? So really collecting relevant data is very, very important. Data preparation and EDA. EDA means exploratory data analysis. You will be coming across this term many more times in the upcoming sessions. Basically, what we do here is to visualize this data in the form of tables, charts, heat maps, and many more other ways, in scatter plots, line plots. You compare 2 or more columns, how they might be related, and things like this. So in this, we without applying any model, we try to understand how the data is working. Say for example, the revenue of a company for the last 20 years. How is the revenue increasing, decreasing, or all these things? By looking at just values, you won't get as much information as you would get by looking just at a chart. I guess many of you must be in the cryptocurrency, doing trades and all in all the cryptocurrencies available. Many of you might be in stocks as well. You have the candlesticks, right? Tell me if it was just written the high price, the low price, the median price, and the current price, and what was the opening price and the closing price. Would you have made any sense out of it? Most probably not. Maybe you would have subtracted a few terms and found out, okay, this is a width, this is a width, but you wouldn't have even understood what is the change compared to others had it not been in a graphical format. And there lies the power of visualization. So next we perform feature engineering and feature extraction. What this means is, say for example, I am having the revenues of, as I said, revenues of a company for the last 20 years. Now I'm trying to understand what is the growth. To understand growth, we need to use the revenue column and subtract from the previous one, and then find, say for example, in percentage terms from the what is the change on the previous year, and so on. And there we are extracting a feature. How? That is, we are introducing a new column called growth, in which we are saying that this has been the increase from the previous year. And often, as you'll find out, it so happens that when we are doing model building, we require these features. The model isn't able to calculate these itself. So that is a very important parameter while doing. And obviously we do a lot more, like for example, what happens is that the data that is given in one particular, I'm talking about tabular data for now. I'll be going to other data later on. For example, one particular column might be having so spread out values, so large values, that they might bias your model towards that column, or maybe they might introduce errors in your model. So you need to find the standard deviation and the mean of the data, and you have to find the z-score. What that is, I'll explain later. But what I'm trying to tell you is that the feature engineering and the feature extraction portion is very much important, relevant, and how it works. What are the things that we are doing here? For example, say in images, what is an image? An image is just an RGB value for a number of pixels. So, and these values range from 0 to 255. As you know, there is 1 byte is equal to 8 bits. 8 to the 8 is 256, if I'm not wrong. Yes, 256. And so you have 0 to 255 values. Often what we do is to divide these RGB values by 255 to get a normalized score from 0 to 1. And this often helps in models. You'll realize all of that while doing the sessions. Don't worry about that. But I hope you're understanding what I'm trying to tell you, that here we are actually applying feature engineering. The final what we do is model building. So we have some algorithm, and on the basis of the algorithm, we try to train models. That is, build models that will be able to predict something, given in taking an input, it will give some output. Say, for example, in the bank loan case, we'll be giving the terms such as assets, what are his liabilities, the credentials, the credit scores, and so on. And it will be able to predict whether that loan should be given or not. And finally, deployment. Deployment is a very crucial step. You have built a model, but you need to use that, right, for the public, or maybe for group, your team's use. So for that, you need to deploy it somewhere, possibly in the cloud. And so that is the and another thing that is not mentioned here is the storage of data. You need to store it and maintain it as well, so that you can utilize it properly. Because improper storage will lead to some changes, some errors in data that will render that data maybe useless. So for that, we require storage, proper storage as well. And then coming to artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence was a term coined by Robert McKinsey in 1955. So that is why 1955, I believe. Basically, what is artificial intelligence and how does it relate to data science? We need to understand that. Artificial intelligence is giving the capability to a non-living organism the same capability as a living organism. Sorry, non-living organism. I'm very sorry. Non-living machines, computing machines, to a living organism to think, or to be able to make some deductions on its own. Now, why did I say as living organism? Say, for example, a cat. It is able to hear noises and understand that if it's the noise of a, say, for example, a lion that is roaring, or maybe a human talking, it won't be able to understand what I'm saying, but obviously it will be able to differentiate. It will be able to see everything. And it isn't like just like giving the intelligence of humans. It can be even other animals as well. The very basic intelligence that every animal has. So any computing machine that we have, if we can allow it to learn the intelligence of this was good. Yeah. To learn the intelligence of an animal or a human being, then that is what we call artificial intelligence. So what is the relation between artificial intelligence and data science? We have a very good image here. Data science, as you can see, here's data preparation, there's visualization, there's statistics, experimentation with the data. And there's this artificial intelligence which applies various models, there's text mining, time series forecasting, recommendation engines, and so on and so forth. And what we do with artificial intelligence is actually analyze the data and build models which will be able to use that data, or maybe take some new data and give certain predictions. That is the whole point of artificial intelligence. That is, an artificial something is being intelligent. That is, it is able to decide. So I'm coming to machine learning a little bit later. Let's continue with artificial intelligence. So there are a few ways in which you can classify or find the types of artificial intelligence. One of them is here. Here it's dividing it into machine learning, speech-based intelligence, that is being able to understand speech or being able to understand text and convert it to speech. Then there's vision, which is image recognition and machine vision. There's NLP, that is natural language processing, like classification, translation, and data extraction of natural language. Say, for example, you type something in English and you want an artificial and intelligent model to be able to understand what you are doing. So it extracts all the useful words from what you typed in. So that is natural language processing. Expert system is like a combination of multiple of these systems. I'll give an example. Let's say in medicine, there's a model, there's a expert system which takes images of your, let's say, X-ray images, and it will diagnose the disease that you might be having and give you the medicines or what should be done to treat the disease. So in that case, what it is doing, it is first trying to understand or infer from the images that is taken. Then it uses that information. Say, for example, it diagnosed a disease, some disease, say lung infection, for example, and it will compare the disease and the other symptoms with maybe a database of all the diseases and find the cure for that, and it will sorry, just a second. And it will give you recommendation on that basis. So that is an expert system. Planning and optimization, I guess you can understand that. And finally, robotics. Robotics is again multiple of all these, and it also includes mechanical procedures like moving hands, moving legs, and so on and so forth. So another classification that I found out, and this is very interesting because it states a lot of other things, such as machine learning. You have, again, it can be classified, and this is one of the classifications. I'll talk about other classifications also: deep learning, supervised, unsupervised. This okay. This is almost similar to the other previous one. We'll skip that. Okay. Finally, the Turing test. So it's a very interesting topic. What is a Turing test? And I've given some links which you can actually go and find out on Geeks for Geeks and Wikipedia. And what a Turing test says is that a machine is said to be human like if and only if it can behave so much like a human that someone who is unable to see the machine and the person is actually cannot differentiate between the human and the machine on the basis of the questions they ask. Say, for example, I'll give an example. Say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 multiplied by 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 6, 5. Now, if you give this to a computer with enough processing capability, it will return some answer. Well, human being won't be able to unless you have some someone who can multiply 10 cross 10, like Shakuntala Devi. I'm not talking about her, but in general, a normal human being. So in that case, the machine will be able to return the answer in probably 1 second, a fraction of a second. And this person will be able to know that, okay, this is a machine, this is a human being, because human beings, normal human beings, aren't able to do that calculation. And so the Turing test gives a very interesting example where a machine behaves like a machine and not like a human being. And if the machine is so trained that it says that I cannot do this calculation, then this person who is unable to see the machine and the human won't be able to differentiate between them. So this is the negative side. The positive side again is that it is able to process text. It is able to read out all the text that is given to it and analyze the text as same as human beings. It is able to identify, say for example, images given to it, identify cats, dogs, the background. So that will be a positive side as well. And you can read about them. Just type Turing test and Geeks for Geeks and Wikipedia link will come. Sorry. Yes. So coming to machine learning. So we understood what is artificial intelligence, and now we diving into machine learning. Basically, machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence such that it is given some data, the machine trains on this data, and then it learns some useful features from that data and is able to predict an outcome on some new data. So the steps will be, you give it some training data. They may be labeled or not. I'm not saying that. And just you're giving it some training data, say for example, images, say for example, tabular data, just like as I said earlier in the bank case, for example. And it is able to apply all these algorithms. We are not going into algorithms right now. We'll cover them later on. And it applies some black box algorithms, and it trains these algorithms trains itself using these algorithms to be able to predict on some new data. Say for example, you are now giving it the data of a new customer that has come in who wants to take a loan. You give it the data and you ask it if it is safe to give loan to that person. So that is what machine learning is. And it's as simple as that. So as you can see, I put it's a meme, but anyways, an image here. A human is saying, I can learn anything automatically from experiences. Can you learn? Yes, I can also learn from past data with the help of machine learning. So the machine is able to learn something from past data that is given to it, possibly just like a human being, obviously not as same as that, but quite close, but in a different way. Yes. So we come to the types of machine learning systems that there are. So as I said, supervised, unsupervised, all these are just one type, that is human supervision. We are also having learning method and pattern detection based. So what is human supervision? It means that human has been labeling the data for the computer. What do I mean by labeling? That is, it has given it some history where there is a some given input, and it has already said that for this input, this is the output. For example, in that bank loan case again, it has given that this is the input where this is the asset, this is the credit score, this is all liabilities, and so on and so forth. And it says that no, he was not a defaulter. And you can understand what I am saying. So that is the human supervision based. And in that category, we can have 4 types of models, that is supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised, and reinforcement. So what is supervised? Supervised means the data has been labeled. That is, the historical data has been labeled into various sections, and the model is able to train on that. Unsupervised means that there is no labeling. It is just given a bundle of data, and it is asked to get information out of that data. It has to do it itself. It doesn't have any output to check whether it is correct or not, nothing as such. Semi-supervised is a combination of supervised and unsupervised. So what happened is that in supervised, we have a say for example, we have 100 rows of data, and for every row we have the input and the output. In supervised, what we could do is that we have, from this 100, we could have 80 on which it will be able to train, and then we would find out if on the rest 20 it can predict the correct output. In semi-supervised, what happens is that there is a dearth of data. You don't have as much as 100 data, you have only 40 or 50, and you train on 20 data, and you ask it to predict the correct levels for the other 20 or 30 data. So what, say for example, in Google Images, what happens, Google Photos, when you upload someone's image, then it asks you to label those images. Say it asks you to label 10 or 20 images, and then it will run a model on some new, first on those images which you have already labeled. And if you upload a new image, it will ask you whether it is of that person or not. I guess everyone of you have experienced that. And why does it ask? Because it has already run a model, and it is predicting whether that image is of that person or not. And you are saying whether it has correctly predicted that person, or it has incorrectly predicted that person. So basically, here the data is limited. In reinforcement learning, what we do is training an agent to do a particular work that will have an outcome. If the outcome is positive, by positive I mean that the outcome what we want. Say for example, in a tic-tac-toe game, we want it to win and not lose. So the positive is that to win in a tic-tac-toe game, and it will be rewarded if it wins, and it will be penalized if it loses. So in a tic-tac-toe example, say for example, it wins one game, then it is given 5 points. If it draws, it is given 0 points, and if it loses, then it is given -5 points. So as you can understand, that +5 means it is rewarded, and -5 means it is penalized. And for draw, it is not given any points. Now, what the agent will do is that for the first move, it will try to predict one particular square for the symbol that it is given. So it is given a cross, so it will predict that, okay, here I put the cross. Now, there could be another machine, there could be a human, whatever, who plays with it. And for the final result, whatever happens for the machine, it will be penalized or rewarded, as I mentioned. And that is how it learns. I'm coming to all of those in detail a bit later. For the learning method and the pattern detection, I'll ask Shanawaz to speak a few words because he'll be able to tell this better. Shanawaz?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So as you may have seen that there are different types of machine learning systems. We can basically categorize them into three types. Like first is the human supervision based machine learning systems, which depends on that whether the model is trained by some provided examples or not. And then comes the learning method based. So the learning method based machine learning systems are like, say, whether they are able to or not learn from the incremental data. Say, for example, you have a stream of data incoming in real time. For example, consider the stock market. So say a model is there which can predict whether the stock's prices will be up in the next moment or it will be down. So the continuous data is coming. So the different stock prices are coming, they are changing at every instance. So the data is in real time. That is, they are coming continuously. So whether it can adapt to that thing and it can train the whole system and make predictions based on that, is it capable of that whole thing or not? Depending on that, this learning method thing comes. And here are two types. Like one is the online learning thing, another is the batch learning. So in first I'll take up the batch learning. So in batch learning, what is there is like you have the data, you build a model using that data, and you train it. So like you have the model which is trained on a predefined data. Now you'll be going to deploy that model to production. It will be making predictions. Like for example, you may be hosting that model in a server, and say it may be classifying, say for example, cats or dogs. Okay, so the model is currently there on a server. You go to a website, it is accessible there. You upload an image and you get the prediction whether the uploaded image was a cat or a dog. Okay, say today some new breeds of dogs have already come up, which look somewhat very different or maybe confusing for the model to predict. So what you need to do is that you need to retrain the whole model, and then you need to modify that model which is already uploaded or hosted on that server. So in batch learning, what you have to do is that you train the whole model again offline. You again build another version of that model, and then you upload that whole thing again on the server. So what happens is that there is a bit of downtime. Like say, for example, the server is down for maintenance. When you will be training the model, you will be building the model, and then you'll be uploading the model until it is ready for predictions. So this whole thing takes a lot of time, and which is not possible in a real life scenario. So this is what happens in batch learning, like incremental learning, you may say. And the next comes is online learning. Like you train the system incrementally by feeding it data instances sequentially, either individually or by small groups. Hello, am I audible? The net is fluctuating, I think. Hello.
Yes, continue.
Okay. So the another thing is that online learning, where the system can adapt to new continuous data which is coming in real time. Say for example, in the stock market only, say different prices are coming, and your data is adapting to, your model is adapting to those data, and it can generate new predictions based on that. So this may also, again, this batch learning may happen in two types. You may feed the whole incoming data at once, or you may feed it by dividing the whole data into many groups or many batches. So your system is learning on the fly. As data is coming, it is adapting, it is learning, and the new model is building, it is getting deployed. So this is what the learning method based machine learning systems. Then comes the pattern detection. On the basis of pattern detection, we can again categorize machine learning systems. So there are two types. First is the instance based, and then is the model based. Okay, so here you will see how machine learning systems can generalize things. say for example, in the instance-based learning, this is the most trivial form of learning, like is to learn by heart. Say I have, say for example, in spam emails, you build a classifier which can classify whether a given email is a spam or not. Say it is coming from a marketing or promotion or any sales campaigns or those things. So when you feed an email, it can classify that as a spam or not. So in this instance-based learning, what happens is that you give them, you feed the model a particular set of data where some emails are tagged as spam and some are tagged as not spam. What it does, what the model does is like it learns the whole data and it remembers it by heart. I mean, the next time if you give some email which contains the exact same set of words which were there in some training set where they were already labeled as spam, if it finds those same instances of words, only then it will be able to categorize that email as a spam email, else not. So this is this instance-based learning where it learns by heart. If you give anything different to that, it won't be able to do that. And then coming to the model-based. In the model-based, what happens is that you are generalizing the whole thing by building a model which is trained to make predictions. For example, say in a particular country, we're analyzing the whole thing, like in the any GDP analysis or something. When the GDP goes high, we come to the analogy or we come to the inference that the people are staying more happy. So this is an inference which we drew from the data which is already present there. So we built a model on that. Like if you feed some new data now, it is already having a model. It knows how to think. The thinking process it knows, not the data. It knows how to think. So this is the model based, where it already generates a model and that model makes predictions. And so these are the three categories of machine learning problems. First is based on the basis of human supervision. Then how it is learning. Is it on the fly or is it you are training it and again uploading that thing? And then is coming the pattern detection, where you know that if it can learn and predict on the basis of its own intelligence, or it may be like instance based. It learns by heart. If it encounters the same thing, only then it will be able to decide. So these are the three main types of machine learning systems. So the learning method and this pattern detection, these are actually integrated into the current learning. Will not be learning as a separate things, but the things we'll be focusing on are the first human supervision based machine learning systems. The supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised is also not that much into production except only a few rare instances. But reinforcement learning is again a very important thing. Like for example, in the self-driving cars which are being deployed now, the reinforcement learning is deployed. So we'll learn about that later on. But for now, let's proceed with this proceed with the supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning, keeping semi-supervised aside. Yeah. So this you may continue.
Yeah, thank you. So, as I have earlier said, that we have some labeled data in supervised learning, because that is, we have human supervision. That means that somebody has already labeled the data. As you can see, in supervised learning, models are trained using labeled data set, but the model learns about each of data. Once the training process is completed, the model is tested on the basis of the test data, and then it predicts the output. So I hope you can get a clear idea about supervised learning. And in supervised learning, we'll have two categories, that is regression and classification. Now, so what is regression and what is classification? Say, for example, I am predicting the revenue of a company for the next year. That is a regression task. Why is it a regression task? Because I am predicting a value that is related to the, that is not only related to the input variables, but also it can be an infinitely large range of values. Say, for example, for the past years, it lies in thousands. Sorry, in 1,000 crores, right? So possibly it will be some 1,000 crores this year also, but it can be real value. That means it can be, say, 1,001.5 thousand crores. It can be 2,000, 3,000, some crores, and so on and so forth. And the thing is that in regression tasks, the data will have the label will be not be yes or no, it will not be true or false, but it will be some value of a function, say a polynomial function, a uh, linear function. So that it will be some value on that function. So that will be our regression tasks. And in classification tasks, we have to say whether it's a true or false, whether it's a yes or no. As like in the bank loan one, we have to say whether to give that person a loan or not. That is yes or no. Or maybe even we are having images of dogs, cats, fish, and horse, and we are given a new image, and we need to classify only within dog, cat, fish, or horse. In that case, that is again a classification, because we are classifying the images into one of these categories. That is, in other words, is that the output variable is categorical. So categorical data means that it can take some finite set of values, whereas here it will be an infinite range of values, of real values, and it can be any value in that range. Okay. So also we have unsupervised and semi-supervised learning. In unsupervised learning, as I already said, there will be no labeled data. So for example, we have the same data set. Here we this cat, dog, fish, and horse. This data we have here, and it's all bundled, and we do not know which image is the cat, which image is a horse, which image is the dog, and it's not possible for us to do that. But what we do is that we ask the model that we have developed, the algorithm that we have developed, to cluster these images such that at the end the output will be all the cat images will be together, all the dog images will be together, all the horses and those animals, they will be clustered into one for their own category. The pros of this is that you don't have to label each and every image. The cons is that it will be very difficult to train such models, because obviously if you do not have any labels, you have to make such a models that it will be able to make models itself and differentiate between two images. And so we have clustering problems in unsupervised learning. There we can many more, but mainly we have clustering. And in semi-supervised, as I already said, that example of Google Photos, how it does supervision, then it supervised learning, then it moves to unsupervised learning, and so that is all for unsupervised and semi-supervised. And finally, we have reinforcement learning. As you can see here, there's an agent. I already given an example of the tic-tac-toe game. This is another example where there's water, there's fire, and the agent is asked what it should do. Whenever it selects to go to the fire, then it is penalized some points. Say here is minus 50 points, and so it understands that here it should not be going, because this is something which is wrong, where it should not go. So next time avoid it, and then it will know that it should come this side, and possibly from here take that water to the fire. So that is the next step, and iterate until an ultimate optimal policy is found. Yes. So that is all about reinforcement learning, and actually that is all about machine learning as well. And finally, for all the sessions that we'll be having, the language will be Python. All of it will be Python, I suppose. Yes. Shahnaz, it will be Python, right? All of it?
Yeah,
Or is there
most of it is
on the
Python.
language?
Like, all of it only. Yeah, but
All of it,
yeah,
yes.
one thing is there. If anyone is interested in doing a bit more, they can go on with learn another language, which is R, which is more of a kind of statistical thing.
Yes.
So yeah, if you are interested, you can go on learning with R, but we'll continue here with Python only.
Yes. Okay. So we'll be learning Python. Until now, do you have any questions in the theory that I said? Because we'll be moving to Python after this. Any theory questions? I guess that was a lot of information. If you have any questions, please ask us. Ask us. We'll be more than happy to help you. Sir,
Who is
okay.
saying sir?
First of all, who is Shayan Mondal? I mean, which department and which year? CSC, first year. Okay. I am your 1 year senior, so I am in second year right now. So you can call me Dada. You can call me. You can just ask the question. Yes. Could you please tell about the model-based pattern detection? Shahnawaz, will you take that question?
Yeah. Sure. So the model-based learning is like it falls under that class that if your model, the machine learning system which you are trying to implement, if it is able to generalize or not. Like most machine learning tasks are about making predictions only. This means that given a number of training examples, the system needs to be able to generalize to examples it has never seen before. Having a good performance measure on that training data is good, but insufficient. The true goal, what we need to do is like the true goal for the model is to perform well on new instances of data, not on the ones which it has already encountered. Okay, so following by this, there are two main approaches to generalization. One is instance-based learning and the model-based learning. Instance-based learning, as I've already said, like it is learning by heart. It can only see those things. It can only recognize those things which it has learned. Like say, for example, in the KG class, what we'll be able to see, like the poems which we have already learned, we can only recite those. Not any new poem which we have only learned the name, we can bring in. We can't do that. We can only recite those we have on which we have learned. That is basically instance-based learning, learning by heart. Then comes the model-based learning. The model-based learning, it is another way to generalize from a set of examples by building a model of these examples, then using that model to make predictions. What is a model here? A model is nothing. A model is just a piece of code, a piece of a program, basically, which is running. So it sees the examples which I'm providing to that. It is basically like humans, you can say. We see the patterns which are available around us in the nature. Say for example, it is cold in winter. We know, we are seeing this every year, like it is cold in winter. Now our mind is trained in, who is this, please mute yourself. In the mind we have already understood, we have recognized, yes, it is cold in winter. So we have built our own intelligence on that. That is the model based learning. We have built a model, and based on that, if someone says that do I require a sweater in winter, I know that it is cold in winter. So I can already now say that yes, I will require a sweater since it is cold. See, now I am making new predictions on the data which I have learned. So this is basically model based learning, where I know I'm building the intelligence, I'm building my own brain. This is model based learning. Is it clear now? Who was that, Sam? Yeah, thanks. So what we have,
any more questions?
Sorry?
Any more questions from anyone?
Yeah, sure.
Or even if you come up with questions later on after we share you the resources, you can always go to our Slack channel, and under the AI branch, you can always ask questions. We'll be more than happy to answer those.
Yes, we'll be sharing
We actually
you all
want
these
you to
resources.
use. Yeah, we want to you to.
We'll be sharing all these resources which I've done and collected, so you can always go through them. There are video tutorials, there are blogs, there are posts, and there are books as well. So you can go through that. You can we have given some collected resources which will help you to know these things in a channelized manner. It will help you in this way. We're not like we'll be covering every bit of everything, so it is not possible. We'll be telling you what to do, from where it is better. I mean, the things which we have analyzed, like for example, a tutorial is good on this channel, so we'll recommend you, like, this channel, you go and you do this, you'll be knowing these things, and it will be better than us also. They'll be teaching you better than us. Like now, like the digital era, like everything is available online. So like any YouTube tutorial you go and you learn, you'll be learning a lot. Just you need to be consistent, and you have to, I mean, learn it in a consistent manner only. And make short notes so that it may be helpful for you later on also. Yeah. So wasting no more time. What we
Yeah.
have next? Sorry.
Yeah. We will continue with a bit of Python because I guess many people here have not programmed in Python. We'll be sharing you links so that you can study Python. It will just take you 5-6 hours at max to understand what Python is if you already know a language, which I guess you know already because all of you have to learn C at least in the first year. Anybody who hasn't worked with Python, you can say in the chat, you can speak up.
Many will be. Many will be there, I think. How many of here are from outside computer science department? I mean, you can just turn on your mic and say we'll keep a count. Like we'll know
I
how
am
many.
from electrical.
Electrical. Okay.
I am from mechanical.
Okay.
Electrical. Mechanical.
Instrumentation.
Okay, so instrumentation. Okay, there are varied branches. So like
I'm
have you
from
been
mechanical
exposed to?
ATC.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
No issues.
Oh,
So
yeah,
various branches
all
are
of
there.
you, I mean, other than, no, even CSE ones, do you know
Yeah.
Python or like worked with
Python.
it? No, actually, the
Yeah,
thing is
many
that
may not
many
be
people
exposed
have,
currently to
in
Python.
high school, they have learned Python.
I know a bit. I know a bit. I recently did a course.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
So, continuing Python, I'll give you the basics and overview of the environment that we'll be using for our next sessions, so that we are on the same level. I'll just share my screen. Okay. First, I'll just go to Visual Studio Code. If you want to do just Python and not data science, you can use Visual Studio Code or any other like PyCharm and IDLE. All of those you can use. So I'm just introducing you to one thing that you might not know, and that is the Jupyter notebook kind of feature that we have here. So for example, if you want to write some Python code, let's say we are importing, I'll tell you what import OS means. I'll tell you all of that. And then if you hit Shift Enter, there will be an interactive session. No, Anaconda Navigator is not required. It requires the local server, which it will download itself for. Oh, sorry. For what is required for what? Data science. No. Or you don't need to download Anaconda.
Basically,
So,
we'll not be needing any of these. This is only a local development environment. Mostly what we'll do is
Yes.
on online platforms, like
Yes,
for
yes,
example, Colab. So there the environment will already be set up. We'll have everything's ready. And then we'll just proceed. We'll just run our code, pieces of code, and we'll get the results. So no issues. This is only
Yes.
an optional thing which you can follow to set up your local environment. If anyone wants to work locally.
Yes. So this is something that I thought that this is an update, and many of you might not know. So you might want to use this feature in VS Code. I'll now go to Colab. Just a second. Okay. Just a second.
How many of you know what is Colab? How many of you know about Colab? Many will be knowing, like quite famous now. So it is basically a platform by Google where there are spaces to write your code, and you can execute that code on machines which will be deployed by Google. Yeah, Google Colab, right? So the backend, I mean the machines on which this code will be running will be there somewhere else in Google's data centers maybe. So we'll just write our piece of code there, and then we'll be clicking on some button. It will run the code on that machine, and we'll get the results. So basically, we don't need anything else. We just need a browser and sufficient speed internet connection. Nothing else. We can run our codes, and any heavy
And a
task
Google
we can
account.
perform there. Starting with and a Google account, sure.
Yeah. So continuing.
maybe
So whenever you, you want to say something, Jonas?
no, continue.
Oh, yeah. So whenever you want to open Colab, just write collab.research.google.com, the URL, or you can also search for Colab on Google, and the first link is the link to go to Colab, Google Colab or Google Collaboratory. And here you'll find something like this. If you have some projects, you will find it here. And if you want to get a new notebook, here you'll get a new notebook. Okay. So this is how you come to the Colab. This is the notebook that you got, and just a second.
Kittens are running.
Okay,
What is
that's
that?
something in the settings, right? Okay, so
Okay,
I just was
fine.
testing that feature. Let us here you can name that the file. This is IPYNB, means IPython notebook. So it's a notebook that you're using. It comes from Jupyter Notebooks, so it is based on Jupyter Notebooks. So let us write, let's say, dev.ipynb, and you will get this kind of thing. It's called a cell, and here you can write any Python code. Say, for example, I am writing import OS, and it will automatically, as you can see, color it, know what it is. But it won't be able to execute it until unless you connect here. If you connect here, then it will automatically connect to the server that to its
It will be Google will
Google
basically
server, and
allocate you a machine where you can run
yes,
your
it will
code.
allocate a machine. Yes, it will allocate you this RAM, this disk, where you can, here you can see the disk space. So I guess here you could see the disk space, right? Yes. See,
Visible.
this amount of is available, and also if you want some files, you can upload them this here, and this is the connection to Google Drive, and so on. We'll come to those later on. You can actually go through one YouTube video and you'll know all of that. So if we now just click on this button, this is the run cell button. You can click here. You can also press Control Enter or Shift Enter, anything. It will run this cell, and so this is the basic environment that we'll be using. Another thing that you might want to know is go to runtime and change runtime type to GPU or TPU. What is a GPU? What is a TPU? We'll come to that later on. For now, or you might research that as well. And first, let me start with Python. Okay. So what is Python? Python is a programming language, high-level programming language that was developed in some 1990s, and it became popular due to its English-like features. Like, for example, when you do it in C++, the same code will require you to import a standard library, IO library. It will ask you to initiate a main function, and then inside it you will write that piece of code. While in Python, you can just write print. You can do this in any document also. This is nothing special in a cell, in notebooks. You can write in some .py file. That so extension for a Python file is .py. So if you write just print cell, for example, so it will print cell. Yes. This is where the output comes for this Colab. Yeah. For IPython notebooks. And so Python has this feature, has this ability to be able to reduce code. And why does it have that ability? Because it is built on the C programming language that we have already learned in first year. So what actually happens is that Python is actually called C Python. Why is it C Python? Because the basics, the internal code is actually written in C and not in Python. Just as an example, if you go to the Python GitHub repository and check it, you'll find that more than 60%, I guess 70 or 80% of the code is in C. So you can just understand that that Python, the inner inside it is actually C code running. And why Python and not C++ and Java? One, I said it is very efficient in the way that it reduces the code. Also, over C++, it has certain advantages, some object-oriented advantages that that you will learn. You will learn it slowly, and for now, I'll just give you the basics about what to do and how to do all those uh, functions and functionalities in Python in a very brief manner, so that you get the hang of the things, and after that you will be able to replicate those or learn more from yourselves, right? From our suggested resources. Okay. So
So we have already given a video link in the resources thing, which we'll be sharing in Slack also. So there it is, I think 3.5 hours to 4 hours thing. So you'll be getting the whole overview of what Python is, and you will be learning all the basics of that. For now, Swadesh, we can do one thing. Like instead of going
yes.
into all of those theory, let's try some hands-on. Like we have some data we can explore, like that thing. So what we'll be needing is that there are some variables. I think many here will be accustomed to those. I mean, basic programming is in everyone's curriculum, and it is already done.
Mhm.
I think, isn't it? So you all may be knowing what are variables. I'm not talking about any specific programming language, but in general, in programming, there are some variables. There are some functions which execute some code and it does a task. There are some packages from where we import some code and all these, and we print something. We can do other things. We can add, subtract, and all these operations, mathematical operations are there. All of these happen in, and we can write it in any programming language. So since we are doing data science, we'll be mostly dealing with data analysis. Like data analysis is the process of exploring, investigating, and gathering insights from data using statistical measures and visualizations. So what is the objective of this data analysis? It is to anyone, like anyone wants to say why we do data analysis? Like, it's been a long session, like Swadesh has been explaining these things. So anyone would like to try what is data analysis? What is the term? I mean, what is the objective basically of data analysis? Why we do? Anyone can try. Like it's not any test or something. We just want to interact. Nothing else. Finding patterns. Okay, and to derive useful insights from data, collecting, cleaning, and modeling data. Okay, to derive useful insights. Okay, patterns. Okay, to deduce a conclusion. Yeah, quite the right way. So you're going the right way. Like the objective of data analysis is to develop an understanding of data by uncovering trends, relationships, and patterns. So to do data science, like this data analysis, basically, what we need to do is we'll need to play with these data. We need to discover some patterns, some trends, what are the relationships in those data and all those. For that, doing all those things in Colab, we'll be doing in Colab. So we'll require Python as a programming language. So for the time being, you won't need much of that Python, since I'll be showing that in hands-on here practically. So you won't be knowing that much, but you after this session, you can anytime go to the video link, which will be in the resource section. Like it will be of 3.5 to 4 hours, and you'll be getting to understand all of this. This is a very simple, like nothing of those complicated programming and all these things. Just you want to know variables, functions, packages, and all, bus, only these things.
Just
Swadesh,
before
shall
you
we?
continue, yeah.
Yeah.
Say-
Go on, go on.
No,
Like, you'd like to add
one thing
anything?
that I forgot to mention, why are we using Python and not any other programming language? The thing is that Python has one of the largest communities, or possibly the largest community in terms of its applications, in terms of the various things that you can do, and that too in such a simple way that everybody can understand. Obviously, while coding, you must know other languages such as C, C++, because they're the very basics. But what Python does is to simplify all of those difficult, all of those long lines that we need to write, and it does everything behind the hood. So the large community is why we have chosen Python, and you can find a tons of videos, resources out there, and even libraries. What is a library? Just like you have a header file in C, C++. Quite similar to that is a library in Python. Modules, I might say as well, modules in Python. So quite similar. All of that you'll get to learn in those videos. I might have just continued, but it has been a long session, so I'll be leaving that to you to understand. And it's very easy. You can do it in 1-2 days. No worries. So yeah, Shanas, what do you say? What do you think?
Yeah, so we'll be since it's been a long session, so we'll be doing a bit of hands-on, like for a short time, but we'll be seeing how it is done actually. It's been a very long theoretical session, so let me share my screen. We'll basically know how to work with numerical data in Python. Okay, so we'll be doing that in Colab. I'll share my screen. Just a second. Yeah, is it visible?
Yeah.
What is visible? I mean, can you see?
The Colab window. Yeah. It is
visible.
the video is also there. Yeah.
Okay. So what we'll be doing is that we'll be working with numerical data in Python. So what is the data in data analysis, which it typically refers to some numerical data like stock price, sales figures, some sensor measurements, maybe some sports scores, it may be some database tables and so on. These may be the data. So now let us do one thing. Like suppose we want to calculate, or maybe suppose we want to analyze the climate. We want to use climate data like the temperature, rainfall and humidity to determine if a region is well suited for growing any fruit, say apple. So a simple approach to do this will be to formulate the relationship between the annual yield of apples and its dependence on all these variables, like how the yield of apples depends on the temperature, the rainfall and the humidity. Okay, so let us define something. Say yield of apples, let's say it's yield only, yield equals to, let's say let's give a weight to everything. I mean the factors on which it is depending. Say for example temperature, will be giving it W1 weightage to temperature, and then plus W2 will be giving to the rainfall, and will be giving W3 weightage to the humidity. This is basically, in terms it is known as weighted sum. So yield is basically a weighted sum of temperature, rainfall and humidity. Okay, so this equation is approximation, like we're just assuming this thing. So now let us do one thing. Let us initialize the values of these weights. So in Python, like treat W1, W2 and W3 as 3 variables, and we can assign it in single line only. We'll assign 0.3 to W1, 0.2 to W2 and 0.5 to say W3. So we have assigned W1 0.3, W2 0.2 and this. Okay, so now let us say we're given some data. Say for example, let us take a place, say for example Kolkata. So we can define Kolkata's temperature as 73, Kolkata's rainfall as 67, and Kolkata's humidity as 43. So these are the 3 values we have already taken. We can now substitute these variables into the linear equation this to predict what is the yield, assuming that this is the relationship, it is depending linearly on this. So what we'll do is, like we'll say yield equals to W1 into Kolkata temperature plus W2 into Kolkata rainfall plus W3 into Kolkata humidity. So it will give me the value. Say the expected rainfall is this. It will calculate this whole mathematical expression and it will give me the value. So, and now we can do this in another way. Like for example, this is only happening for a single place. What would happen if we like would want to work with say 5 places? How will define? Like it will be a lot of variables. So how to solve that? For example, we define now, say each place we'll define as a collection, or maybe each place. Who is this? Please mute yourself. Uh, some noise is coming. Okay, so say for example, Kolkata is an array, or maybe you can say it is a vector, which is comprised of 3 values. First is its temperature, then is its rainfall, and third is its say humidity. Similarly, we can just do this thing for the other regions also. I'll just copy it to save time. Okay, so 4 places. Okay, so one is of say Kolkata, another is of say Agra, another is say of Delhi, another say of Mumbai. So these are the 3 places which are having this data. uh, so okay, let's modify the data.
না yield-টাকে সরিয়ে দাও, yield-টা কেটে দাও নিচে।
Okay, so these things are there. So we have taken some values, and now these are the weights. These are different places. Like the Kolkata is having these 3 values: this temperature, rainfall, and humidity. Similarly goes for these places. Now we can also define this weights thing in a simple single array. What is an array? It is a collection of values basically. So it's a weights equals to, it is also an array or a vector, what you may say. Okay, so we'll, instead of defining, since we've already done this, let us do it here. Weights equals to W1, W2, W3. So these are this is a weights array, and this is this arrays of the different places having the values. Now to predict this crop yield, let us define a function. Say define crop yield for that place, which will take in 2 values. Do not worry about this. This will be covered in the Python video. So you'll be getting to know it's very simple. And we'll take a variable, say result 0 for simple for loop, say a comma, or let's say the variable x comma its weight in equals to x into w. And then we'll be returning this result. So this is the function which will be telling me the crop yield based on these values, or the weightages and these values of temperature, rainfall, and humidity. So this is the function. I'll be passing it this region, this array, and passing it the weight array, and it will be giving me the crop yield. Just take it for that for now. Now we have defined the function. Now we'll say, like, let me go to another cell. First we'll execute this. Okay, so we have done, it's completed. Next say let us call the function. Let's say crop yield. We'll pass any say Kolkata. Okay, and then the weights array. We'll see when we run this, we'll be getting the crop yield for Kolkata. See, it is 79.8 based on calculating this thing, this linear equation. Similarly, it will also work for other things also. Say for Mumbai, it will be something different. So yeah, it is coming 41.9. Okay, so this is what is happening here. Now, these things are very tedious. In Python, you would write these functions to calculate a simple linear equation. And say, for example, when we are working with a lot of data, there will be various millions of calculations you have to do to analyze that data. So writing this long function for each simple data analysis, it will be very hectic task. So there is another library which is known as NumPy, which it provides a built-in function to compute different things. Okay, so that is NumPy. Now using NumPy, we can do various tedious tasks in a very simple way. Say for example, this is, what is this? This is nothing but the dot product, you may say, for example, say, now this list, this is known as a list in Python. Okay, so this array, or which may be known as array, this is known as a list in Python. In NumPy, the term again comes like NumPy arrays. So this in NumPy are called arrays. So first you have to import this NumPy. So NumPy, if you are developing in your local environment, you will have to install NumPy library first using pip install. There is a command. When you are working in Colab, NumPy is already installed there. You have just to import that. So import NumPy as np. So this is the syntax basically we'll come to know after completing the Python video. So we have imported this package NumPy since we'll be working with this. Okay, so import NumPy as np. Then we'll be defining a place, say for example Kolkata. Okay, so say Kolkata values, and it is a NumPy array. NumPy arrays will be defining like this. We'll be coming later on like why we are using NumPy and not with Python. What are the other differences except this code thing, the size of code thing. So we'll be analyzing that. So say for example, this is a NumPy array 67, 89, this thing. So we have defined this. Sorry, it will run first. Yeah, done. Then you have to run this. Okay, then like, now let us see if it has been done or not. We'll print this Kolkata values. See, it is an array which is consisting of this. So this NumPy array has been created. Now let us declare the weights array also as a NumPy array, this format, w1, w2, w3. So we have defined this, and another code block will be printing this. Let us see. Okay, so what are these data types? I mean, these arrays are also known as NumPy ND array. This is a type of variable, or we may say data type in NumPy, which is known as ND array. Okay, so if you check the type of any, like for example, say you want to check the type of this Kolkata values. What is this? Let's see. This is a NumPy.nd array. Okay, so how can we operate on these? Say for example, you had written this long function for a simple dot product. How will you do this in NumPy? It is very simple. What we have to do is like np dot product for dot product. Then we have to pass this thing, Kolkata values, and then weights. So you have to pass these two NumPy arrays, and you have to write np dot here. So it will be basically performing the dot product of these two NumPy arrays. Let's see. See 79.8. It's the same thing here. See how much code has been replaced by only a single line. It is this. Now, what are the? You can also do other things. Say for example, you can take two arrays and you can multiply them. If you have to do that in Python, what you will do is like you will take each element and you will reference each element and will multiply each of the elements to generate the final array. But in NumPy, what happens is that you can easily multiply two. Just insert the multiply operator. Say for example, you have two arrays defined, say arr1 and arr2, and you have to multiply. So what will do? Arr1 into arr2. This simple, and you will run and it will be executed. I'm not doing it here since these arrays are not defined here currently. So it is that simple to do. There are other operations also. You'll be going through the NumPy official documentation. That link is also in the resource sheet. We'll be providing that. Now, what are the other benefits of NumPy arrays? Why we are using this for data analysis? So the first reason is like, what are the benefits it offers over these Python lists? The NumPy arrays, what benefits it offers? First is they are very easy to use. Like we can write small, concise, and intuitive mathematical expressions. rather than those loops and custom functions. See this. So we can easily simplify that thing. The second is the benefit in performance, like how the NumPy operations and functions. See, NumPy is basically written and implemented internally in C++, and C++ is very fast. So the performance is very much drastically increased when we are using NumPy in case of NumPy arrays, basically in case of Python lists. Let's see how it is happening. So let us take two Python lists. First is, say, array1 equals to, it is explicitly defining a list which is say 10,000, or maybe say 1 lakh. So this is what is defining is like ARR1 is a list of elements which consists of 0, 1, 2, 3 continued to 10,000. So we can define it easily like this, and then ARR2 is again a list of arrays which consists of 1 lakh to, okay, so it is 20 lakhs. Okay, so 1 lakh to 20 lakhs. So the ARR1 is a bit short, ARR2 is much longer than that. Now also we'll define two NumPy arrays, ARR1 underscore np, which is this NumPy array for the same thing. We can easily pass in the list here, which we have already defined earlier, and also second NumPy array we can also pass in the list here, which we have defined earlier, this thing. So both of these will be converted into NumPy arrays and stored in this ARR1 underscore np and ARR2 underscore np. After that, we'll do operations on that. Also, we'll note the times in the operations. For this, let us see. Say the result is 0. Now for, ignore this part. It's basically Python things. Okay, we'll be learning these. ARR2, ARR1, we'll pass both these arrays and we'll do some operations. We'll do this linear equation. Okay, so we'll analyze the time in this operation where we are taking two Python lists. Let us see. So when we first, let us run this thing. This done. Next, we'll see what happens. See, so here we get the CPU times, this thing. Now, let us see in NumPy what happens. We'll do this dot product using these NumPy arrays. So we'll see it here. Oh, sorry.
এটা 0 বেশি হয়ে গেছে 2 lakhs
1 second. See, yeah. So here it was coming in milliseconds. And see, here it came in microseconds, 498 microseconds. So you're seeing how much the time drastically reduced between these when we are doing operations using simple Python versus the operations in NumPy. Like simple Python, I mean Python lists using these two. And when we're doing the same in NumPy, see, 21 microseconds came down to 498, 21 milliseconds came down to 498 microseconds. So you probably understood why we will be preferring NumPy arrays mostly. Now there are other things, like there are, this was a single dimensional array where it consists of only a single list of numbers. There are also multi-dimensional arrays in NumPy. Say, let's say we are taking this whole climate data, I mean this whole thing which we're taken here, we'll take in a single variable in NumPy. Okay, so let us say climate data. It is a NumPy array. This array consists of different rows and columns. So in each row we'll be giving, I had already done this earlier. Let me copy and paste this just. So this is the thing, like there are different rows, this, and this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it is a 2D array which has 5 rows and 3 columns. 3 columns each consisting of those parameters. I mean this temperature, rainfall, and humidity, and each of this is given for each of the city. So this is done. I am defined the whole thing as a in a single variable climate data, which is a NumPy array. You can say it is an array of arrays. And when let us define it, then we'll be printing it. Yeah, so it is defined correctly. So now let's say you are given any array. So NumPy arrays can have any number of dimensions and different lengths along each dimension. Say for example, this is an array of arrays where each individual array consists of 3 things, like a length of each individual array is 3. So when you are given any array, you can simply just NumPy library also provides this shape thing, dot shape property of an array, by which you can analyze what type of what shape it has. Let's say climate data dot shape. Let's see. Let's see, it is a 5 by 3. So it is 5 rows and 3 columns. So using the shape property, you can easily see what is the, when you are analyzing lots and lots of data. Say for example, in many tabular data, there may be millions of rows and millions of columns. So you just do that array name dot shape, and you will be getting it in a single line. Okay, so now this is possible for any length of arrays. Now we'll go to D type. So what type of data is there? The data type. Let's say climate data dot D type. It will give the data type of this. What kind of data? See, in 64, ignore the 64, all are integer data. So this. Now let us do one thing. We had already done this prediction of the crop yield. Now we'll again do the same thing here using this whole 2-dimensional array which we have defined. Okay, so let us define another code block. See how simple it goes. So you have already learned about matrix multiplication in the higher classes. So what matrix multiplication is does is that it multiplies each row and versus column, and it gives a result. So when NumPy has a function which is np dot matmul, which stands for matrix multiplication, and in this we'll pass this array 1, which is climate data, which you can also see as a matrix 1. Then we'll pass this weights, and it will easily multiply these two matrix, and it will give me the result. Let's see again in a single line we can define this whole thing. We already have the weights array or the matrix, and we can multiply the matrix multiplication using this. So we are getting this result matrix. Now there is another command also, if anyone want to explore, you can do. Like, you don't need to do all of this, just simply write climate data given at the sign, which stands for multiplication of matrices, and you can write weights. You'll also get the same result. Okay, so this is a shorter thing. Now what happens in the real life scenario is that we don't get values like these to copy and paste values. We get values in form of CSV files. What are CSV files? They are basically comma separated values. So comma separated values where each record, each line of the file is a data record, and each record consists of one or more fields separated by commas. So a CSV file typically stores tabular data like numbers and text in plain text, in which each line will have the same number of fields. Now let's do some real things. So we are importing there is a library URL. We'll download a CSV file here. Say this. So this is the format for doing some networking here, and in downloading data. Yeah, so I have the URL. Let's see. first parameter I'll give is this, the first URL, and in second, so this is the URL where the CSV file is hosted, and then we'll give the name of the file where we want to save it in our environment. Say, for example, climate.csv. Okay, so once we run this, this CSV file will be downloaded to our this machine, Colab machine, and it will be saved in the current directory with the name climate.csv. Let us run this.
Can you show that by
Yeah,
opening
sure,
that
sure,
folder?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, this is the directory, current directory, this content. Under this, see, these files are there, so it will come and get saved here. See, once we get a response, it means that is already done. We'll just refresh this. See, climate.csv appeared here. Okay, so it gets stored in this content, this thing, climate.csv. Okay, so now we'll do some work with this. Let's see. So let's say we want to see what data we have downloaded. So the climate data, the file name which we have saved, np dot I think just ignore this, like we are getting this as a text file using a function gn from txt. Oh, this is not there. 1 second. Oh, this is not existing.
The CSV or TXT question or CSV?
Done. Now this whole thing came as a text file, or say for example a text, and it got stored in this variable which is climate data. Now let us see what we have downloaded. See, this is the array. So here are some dot dot. I mean the first 3 rows and the last 3 rows are displayed here. Let us see what is the shape of this. I mean, how long is this? Climate data dot shape, which I've already said earlier. Let's see. See, it has 10,000 rows and 3 columns. So after this, we can do different operations on these. Say, for example, we can multiply with matrix multiplication with any other given array, and we can again perform some linear calculations on that and all those things. So we'll do that in some other session. Rather, now what we can see is that we have the data, we have downloaded it from the internet. Now we can do some operations on that data, like for example, mostly focusing on tabular data. So for the tabular data thing, we'll be going on in the next session since it's already too long. So in this way, what happens is you can download different data, you can work with those data. What we had seen today is how to download data, how to access those data, what are the benefits of NumPy, why we use NumPy, and how we can do the different operations. So if once you go to the NumPy website, it has an official documentation where you can explore the different methods. There are various other methods also. And in the next session, what we'll be doing is that we'll be working mostly with tabular data. What we actually receive in real life is like tabular data. There are millions of data as CSV files. So we'll be working on that. We'll learn how to what kind of data actually exists, how to clean that data and get the data in the format in which we can actually work with that, and also explore different ways of visualizing the patterns in those data. So let's do that in the next session. Till the time being, you can just go on with the Python thing. I'm not proceeding more than this since Python is not done for many people present here. So just go on with the Python thing, get an overview of what Python is, practice the basic things, and we'll be proceeding from here from the next session.
And so also, if you want to know what are the libraries that we'll be using in our upcoming classes, it will be NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib and Seaborn. So in case anybody already knows Python and NumPy, then you can study these also for
You can go on
better
learning these.
understanding.
We'll be,
Yeah.
NumPy will be using Matplotlib, we'll be using Pandas, we'll be using Seaborn, these things. So if anyone is interested, you can go on learning this on your own.
Yeah. And also we'll share resources with you on these also, so you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
For now, I guess we'll be having another this weekend or so. So we hope that everybody gets familiar with Colab, with Python. And if you have any questions, you can ask now. Also, before leaving, please do check the feedback form, because I'll just.
Yeah, also just share the resources, or maybe share if any announcements is done, kindly share it with your network so people can follow along.
Yeah.
Slack channel link টা
Yeah,
কিভাবে
Slack
ঢুকবো?
channel, no. That thing is actually like once you go and register on jodh.in, so you will get all of those links via your mail through which you register.
ওকে তাহলে আচ্ছা তাহলে রেজিস্টার
And
করে দেবো।
yeah. Also share it with your department and any juniors, or maybe say anyone from your department or other departments. Okay.
Yes.
ওকে
what will
Concourse
be proceed-
বলছে, হ্যাঁ
Yeah.
না একটা জাস্ট কোশ্চেন আছে Concourse where we get Slack পাবি, you'll get all this in Slack.
Yeah.
And we'll be actually sharing with you a page where you can
page.
see that page. Yeah.
This,
You have
this is
already
the
gone
page
through this page, I
sharing
guess. Yeah.
Okay, so
So-
the URL,
Hmm.
we'll be sharing all those resources here. We'll be giving you the URL of this whole thing. Here, this is the Python course which we have given you, this thing. Then for the NumPy thing, you can follow this. For the data science thing, yeah, this thing I want to just mention. We have given here a data science handbook thing. You will click on this link. It will open a Colab notebook thing. Okay. This thing. This is a very useful thing, like Python data science handbook, which is by Jake Vanderplas. This, you will get the basic things here. So if anyone is interested in this data science whole thing to go into such deeper concepts, you can go through this. The previously in the initial parts, it is given IPython, what are normal Python and those things. Then it starts with introduction to NumPy, then with data manipulation with pandas, then visualization with Matplotlib, and then comes the machine learning concept. So they ignored all these for now. Just for this week, or before the previous session, if you want to do anything or explore on your own, you can go through this thing, this introduction to NumPy. You will click on each of this link. It will open another notebook. You can go through all this. You can see the codes. You can run these codes. You can see the outputs. There are various descriptions also. And then you can again from here see it is a navigation to the next page. So you can go. It will open another notebook and the second page. So you can go through this thing. It is a very useful thing. And other than that, the other resources will be updating here only. So just follow along. You'll be getting access to this page where these sessions will be listed here, one after the other, once they happen, and all the links to the resources will be given here only once they become active. When post this session, we'll be getting it here. So no issues with that. Just share this with your network so that people get to know. Actually, what we are preferring is that instead of going through a more theoretical approach, we'll do this hands-on things. So we'll get a better overview. So what do you think? Should we proceed theoretically or like this? We'll want to know from you all who are present here. Many have left. I think it's a long session.
Conco, you wanted to know, do we understand OOPS concepts for Python? Need to understand OOPS concept for Python. As of now, you don't need to understand, because we'll be doing it from a very high level, from like not going into the deeper understanding about what in a low level point of view. So we won't be requiring that, but obviously it will be helpful if you slowly get to understand OOPS concepts. As of now, it's not required. Or even Viva the ML part, you don't need to actually understand that. But if you have the
You only
time
need
and
basics
the
of
will,
Python.
then you should be going through classes. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
For the ML thing, you will only need the basics of Python. For that, we have given this video, no, this tutorial. So this will be more than enough. Like just go through this tutorial, this link, and only see up till 3.5 to 4 hours will be necessary. After that, there are projects only. So if you want, you can explore, but only up till 4 is recommended for the necessary skills, and you'll be quite adept to do all these things. Nothing else extra
Yeah,
things are required.
in this video, you actually will forget those concepts as well. And it's very easy. It's very easy in Python, and Moshe will explain it to you in a very simple and lucid manner. So don't need to worry. No need to worry, sir. Yeah. Any more questions? Anyone? Any questions on any theory or maybe something else next session? What you want on next session, any suggestions, anything? Or you can actually go and write it in the forms. We'll be more than happy to receive your feedback, positive, negative, anything.
Okay, I see there are a lot of questions. Zip, NP. Okay. So thanks for answering. Also, yeah, many people have raised many questions. Yeah, nice. And so just keep checking in Slack also. We're available there also. We can discuss there. Nothing of any issue.
Actually, we created this channel for